Chaim Weizmann and another one, then you've now broken that linkage. You've got no way of relating those records anymore. And of course, in the systems of systems, that's very important that you be able to do that kind of end-to-end system integration testing. So this is one of the great challenges is how to anonymize data to allow for the successful outsourcing of testing in such a way that doesn't compromise privacy. I have a question from Susan. Can we get a copy of the presentation via the website? Absolutely. It is on the website, rbcs-us.com, on the basic library page. You look at the, I think it's called Testing and Outsourced Projects, and it's a PDF that's posted there, so you can download it and take a look at it. A question from Brian. Is the use of a webcam an acceptable substitute for meeting the testing organization in person? Well, let's try backing this up. I mean, if you were looking at a telepresence system, these fancy telepresence systems, remember that would be installed in a single room, right? So you'd see what was in the room, and if it's not in the room, you don't see. So the same would be more or less true of a webcam, right? I mean, the webcam is going to be mounted. Now, you could say, well, you could have people give us a virtual tour, a camcorder or webcam moving around throughout their facility, and maybe you could make that work. But you're only going to see what you see there, and it's not. It's like looking out of a porthole on a boat. You don't see the whole ocean. It's not the same view as you would get if you were standing on the deck of the boat. And that there's some potential for, I don't know, lack of complete transparency might be the phrase that you could use. So I really would strongly encourage you, if there's any way you can do it, to get there and visit the facility. I understand it costs a lot of money and there's a lot of time involved in doing this. It doesn't necessarily have to be done frequently, but I would strongly encourage you to do it. And as I mentioned, I have seen a lot of situations where projects got into some fairly serious trouble because there wasn't that face-to-face trust building and so forth. And I've also seen situations where projects that did get in trouble, we thrashed around for weeks trying to solve it via email and phone calls and so forth. And then I just finally said, oh, well, I'm going. I'm getting on a jet. I'm going. And within days of me arriving, the problems were fixed. So you have to look at, well, what's the cost of potential project failure? So I think that needs to be kept in mind. Now, sometimes the only way that organizations will learn the importance of this is if they have a problem and they realize that we could have solved it if we'd been there in person. So it can be a tough nut to crack. I've got a question from Blessing. Can you elaborate on testing in-house on the slide carving out the work? Are you recommending to outsource that testing or outsourcing system testing? So to go back to that slide, that's slide number 5, I think, or slide number 8. Yeah. So to go back to this slide here, what I'm recommending is that if say you were following a V model and the project was structured like this, that you would retain the top piece of the V, this stuff up here, in-house. And the reasoning behind that is, well, you've obviously, your organization has to have defined the requirements. Otherwise, the outsourced development organization is not going to be able to build the right thing. And based on those requirements, the in-house test team could then develop the set of tests and ultimately execute those tests when something's handed over. And what I'm saying is that the piece that I would recommend outsourcing is the try to get this pen here. There we go. Is this piece here. I'm saying this piece should ideally be done by an outsourced test team. And now, to the earlier question of, well, could this part be done in-house by the in-house test team as well? Yeah, absolutely. I think that's quite a logical thing to do. I would discourage is allowing the outsourced development organization to own this piece entirely, because I think that there's all these independence issues that I mentioned before. Okay, I got a question from Elham. When first introducing outsourcing to an organization, there's a lot of pushback and negativity as well as fear for loss of their job. What are some of the tips that could help introduce outsourcing within an organization? Well, yeah, there's, fear is a very powerful thing, and this is a really good question. And anytime there's change, there is going to be some amount of fear. And certainly in an environment, an economic environment like the one we're in today, that fear is amplified by the reality that if one were to lose one's job, it would be very difficult to get one back that potentially paid as well. Now, that's not universally true everywhere. Some of our clients are telling us that even in this economy, they have difficulty finding skilled people. But you have to be lucky enough to be in some of those towns where that's still the case. And for the most part, it's a scary thing to lose your job. I think you can't. The organization needs to be transparent about what they're trying to accomplish here. And if one of the things that they are trying to accomplish is reducing headcount, then there's going to need to be some very careful management of how this is done. And this is, certainly, you're now getting into this organizational psychology thing, and I'm not an organizational psychologist by any means, but I've seen the ramifications of this not being managed well, the psychological dynamics not being managed well, and they are, as you point out, Elham, severe. So I think that there is, we have seen in situations clients that didn't do this with adequate thought to how demoralizing and potentially even self-destructive doing this would be because of people, having fear, negativity, and pushback. It's probably, like a lot of things, a good idea if you're going to introduce outsourcing and it's an organization that hasn't done it at all, to actually look at doing it in a staged kind of way and sort of ease yourself into it. And that of course, is going to help manage the impact on the people there, because it will be more limited to start with, and if there's going to be reductions in staff, then that can be managed over time in a more gradual way. And that certainly could help. But, yeah, I think this is a good point, El. I mean, you do need to make sure that management is properly on top of it. And if you're in a company and you see this is about to happen and management is not on top of it, I think you need to be, if you're a test manager, say, you need to be ready to manage within your organization and try to make sure that your test team knows what's going on. And and it's important that if you don't know, you say you don't know. If people ask you the question, is this outsourcing going to result in a reduction in force or the layoff, and if you don't know the answer to that question, it would be better to say I don't know than to lie and make something up and then get caught at it later. Okay, a question from Hina. What exactly do you mean by the term test environment? Well, the test environment would be all of the stuff that you use for testing other than the system under test, which is the test object or the target of testing, and what I refer to as the test system, which would include the test cases, the test data, the tools, automated tools, and so forth. Now, admittedly, there's a fuzzy line between a test environment and test system, but I think that that line is drawn where you say that the test environment it should be either what will actually be in the production environment or stuff that's there to simulate something that is not in the test environment, but will be in the production environment, versus the test system, which is stuff that really has no business in the production environment and is not necessarily simulating something that would be in there. Okay, another question from Lucian here. When talking about logistics,